Since the 1960s, billions of liters of human sewage and industrial waste have been pumped out to sea through massive sea pipelines off Durban's shore. Past surveys have suggested that this dumping has no major impact on the environment and human health.
Now there are fresh concerns that a growing buildup of seabed pollution off the Durban coast is affecting a far wider area of the KwaZulu-Natal coastline than previously thought.
A latest compulsory survey by the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research has revealed a gradual but significant increase in the number of pollution-tolerant polychaetes or bristleworms on the seabed. Stephen Weerts is a marine ecologist.
So since 2000, the monitoring's picked up an increase in this particular worm, and we're pretty sure that's as a result of organic loading.
These worms thrive on the nutrient-rich human waste, rotting food scraps, and other waste flushed daily from toilets, baths, and kitchen sinks. Once a year, Stephen and a team of CSIR scientists take to the seas to test two sewage outfall pipelines 12 kilometers apart. The Central Works pipeline extends just over 3 kilometers out to sea and pumps mostly domestic effluent. The 4-kilometer Southern Works pipeline discharges domestic and industrial wastewater. Stephen took us out to see where the pipelines end.
This is the Central Treatment Works, so this is where a lot of the domestic sewage comes from the central parts of Durban.
Okay, so it's not like they're pumping raw sewage out there, it does?
It's treated to a preliminary level, so it is still pretty much raw sewage, but they essentially screen it, break down the solids, and take out as many of the larger solids as possible, so plastic bags and large bits of debris.
And is this kind of practice common around the world?
It is actually fairly common around the world in seawater disposals, and it's typically done in areas where you have got a marine environment that has a large capacity to receive waste. So it's either deep or has fairly energetic currents and has the ability to disperse the effluent.
Okay, so it's not like we're cutting corners over here?
Not at all. In certain parts of the world, they do treat to higher degrees than what's been treated here, but it's on a need-to basis rather than as a matter of protocol.
Sewer pipelines are sealed with a number of diffusers 100 meters from the end.
The effluent is jetted through these diffusers in an attempt to get it to dilute and diffuse as fast as possible.
The pipeline is inspected regularly by divers from the city. But Stephen and his team take their samples from a boat. This footage was taken during their research. He says they test the quality of the water and the sediment.
I always say water plays the flute, sediments play the bagpipes. The sediments really hold the signal a lot better than waters are transient. You know, they're moving up and down on a daily tidal basis.
First, they have to make sure they're testing water from the sewage plume. Once they're at the right spot, the scientists drop down tubes which can be triggered to take samples of the water at different depths.
In terms of sediments, we use a big, heavy steel grab. We drop it down to the ocean floor, grabs a sample of sediment up. We bring that up and we process that for various things.
Then it's off to the laboratories, where everything is analyzed for metals, nutrients, and organic contaminants.
This is one of the samples that was taken in direct vicinity of the Central Works outfall. Okay, so essentially this is the animals that have been sieved out of the sediments taken from that grab we were talking about, and quite a diversity of animals. A lot of different species of bristleworms. You can see there are little bivalves in there. There are a couple of little crustaceans.
He says it's just like a compost heap in a garden that attracts earthworms.
The same applies to the sea. If you put debris in there, that's going to have bacterial action on it.
But while the samples taken from the Central Works pipeline has an acceptable mix of sea creatures expected to flourish in this environment, samples from the Southern Works outfall are disturbing.
In the Central Works, I'd expect 20 to 40 animals per square meter, these little species. When we get to the Southern Works and in close proximity to the Southern Works, 500 meters on either side, within 500 meters on either side of that outfall, you can look at even up to 600 of these animals per square meter.
Most are pollution-resistant bristleworms who have colonized this section of the seafloor to the virtual exclusion of other forms of seabed life. Judy Bell from the Coast Watch Environmental Lobby Group says that the worm population explosion is a clear indicator that the toxic cocktail of sewage-based bacteria, chemicals and heavy metals spewing from this pipeline is out of control. According to the CSIR report, metal concentrations exceeded the limits.
Organic sewage is basically nutrients in the sea. And as long as there's not an accumulation of those nutrients, it's okay. But it's when the organics and the metals mix together and the metals become bioavailable, that is the issue. Because those accumulate in the system and then become available through the food chain.
Another CSIR project has identified elevated levels of arsenic in mussel populations along this coast, thanks to chemical contaminants in the seawater. And according to the sewage report, this noxious concoction seems to be floating further from the pipelines than previously thought, as much as 6 kilometers away.
We're in fact moving water out to sea with a tiny bit of waste. Why don't we find ways to deal with our sewage on land at source? And the same goes for industry.
eThekwini municipality says that they are working on solutions.
Behind me is the South Durban Industrial Basin, where every day thousands of liters of industrial wastewater is produced. That water is sent to be treated and degritted before it's pumped out to sea.
Christopher Fenimore is from the city.
Because the city right now has started a project where we're going to be taking 60% of the solids out of the pipeline, anaerobically digesting them to produce methane and using the methane as an energy source.
Why isn't all of it being recycled?
That's a very good question. I would like to see all of it recycled. From an environmental perspective, I think that's the best way to go. However, we do experience this problem with the human perceptions and the yuck factor of drinking your own sewage. However, we have to respect people's perceptions at this stage, and politically it just won't fly.
There's no denying that the environmental quality of our marine resources is on a negative trajectory, and that relates to obviously what we're putting into the sea. It relates to how we're developing the coast. It relates to how we're using the coast.
Judy says people need to think about what they are putting down sewers and drains.
We believe there's this place called away, and we throw away, we flush away. Away is a lovely place.
And if we don't stem the tide of pollution being dumped into the oceans now, who knows what toxic horrors may wash back up on our shores in years to come.